Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something really fascinating. It's this intersection of leadership, massive IT transformation, and how one executive managed it all inside a global giant. We're focusing on Alex Pilar's career journey using his LinkedIn profile and also this really compelling 2010 interview about DHL's global IT strategy. So, our mission here is to figure out how a leader like him navigates these huge organizational changes, shifts between business and IT roles, which is pretty unusual,
Mhm.
and orchestrates this just colossal tech overhaul. Ready to unpack this. Okay, so when you first look at Alex Pillar's career, what kind of jumps out, especially from the sources, is this fluidity, I guess. An executive moving apparently seamlessly between leading business units and then heading up IT strategy. This whole idea of a CEO becoming a CIO, it feels, I don't know, quite rare in the corporate world.
It really does. And it's more than just swapping job titles, isn't it? This isn't just a career path. It kind of highlights how those lines between business strategy and IT execution are blurring, right? Especially at the top. It shows how crucial that holistic view has become. So, Alex Pilar, he joined DHL way back in 1991 in Prague. He moved up through various roles pretty quickly, becoming managing director for DHL Express Czech Republic by 96.
So running the whole country's express business, that's a big operational role.
Exactly, a major leadership position. But then came this pivot. In May 2001, he shifts into IT leadership, becomes the IS director for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, based out of London.
Wow. Okay. So charge of all information systems for that huge region.
Huge region, yeah.
Mhm.
And just 2 years later, 2003, he's made global program director. And get this, responsible for IT integration across all the combined DHL companies.
Okay, stop there. The scale of that. Integrating IT after mergers and acquisitions, that sounds monumental.
Absolutely monumental, bringing all these disparate IT systems under one roof.
Mm.
And this role even included setting up and running the IT center in Prague, which, now employs over 1,000 people, providing global IT services.
Incredible.
And the story doesn't stop there. He keeps moving up the IT ladder, eventually becoming CIO of DHL supply chain.
Mm.
But here's the really interesting part, the bit that makes his path stand out. From 2011 to 2015, he moves back into operations as COO of DHL supply chain.
Back again from CIO to COO.
Yeah. And then, if that wasn't enough, he then returns to IT services leadership as an EVP. This back and forth between pure business roles and deep IP roles at really senior levels. It's not just job hopping. It's just something more deliberate, like a hybrid leadership model.
So what was the thinking behind that? Did the sources explain why DHL did this or why he did?
Yeah, they touch on it. Apparently, DHL as a company has this tradition, or maybe a philosophy, of moving people around different functions,
Yeah.
to broaden their experience. And Pillar himself, he had a background that kind of mixed tech and business anyway. So these transitions, like from MD to CIO, maybe felt more natural within that DHL culture.
Okay, that makes sense. It suggests IT isn't just seen as a back office function, but
Yeah.
really integral to the business strategy itself.
Exactly. That seems to be the key takeaway there.
So building on that, knowing Pillar had this unique ability to bridge business and IT, how did that play out in DHL's actual IT overhaul? What did that global strategy look like on the ground?
Right. So let's get into the nuts and bolts based on that 2010 interview. First, you just have to appreciate the scale of DHL. 4 main divisions: supply chain, express, forwarding, and Deutsche Post itself. It's massive.
Okay.
And what's really insightful about how they managed IT is that the division CIOs didn't just report up within their division. They all reported to a central IT board.
A central board. Okay.
And here's the kicker. It was headed by the CFO.
The CFO, not a CTO or a group CIO.
The CFO, which, strongly suggests they wanted tight alignment between IT decisions and the overall financial and business goals. It fosters these unified discussions.
Very interesting structure. So what about the transformation itself?
Well, it was definitely a long game. It had actually started even before Deutsche Post acquired DHL.
Yeah.
And all the growth through acquisitions just kept adding layers of complexity,
Hmm.
merging different systems, different processes.
Nightmare fuel for IT, I imagine.
Pretty much.
Right.
But by 2010, the sources say their IT strategy had been clear and stable for about 7 years, focused very much on optimization and transformation. And a huge part of this was creating DHL IT Services, or DHL ITSC.
The internal IT company you mentioned?
Exactly. Not just a department, but set up like an internal service provider. His whole job was to consolidate and optimize everything: infrastructure, hosting, application support, the works. Centralize it all.
And this had been going on for a while by 2010.
Yeah, about 6 years at that point. And they built those key near-shore IT service centers we talked about, the big one in Prague, 1,000 people.
Hmm.
and Cyberjaya in Malaysia, 1,200 people.
So these were the global hubs for consolidating hosting, infrastructure, telecom support, help desks, basically everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Centralizing those core IT functions.
That's a massive internal effort. But I'm wondering, what didn't they keep internal? Was everything consolidated in-house?
Ah, good question. And that really shows their strategic thinking. They did make a major outsourcing decision. It was their telecom infrastructure.
Telecoms, okay.
Yeah, in the year leading up to that 2010 interview, they outsourced all their global telecom infrastructure and services. They split it regionally. AT&T got North America, Telefonica got Europe.
And why do that if they were so focused on internal consolidation with ITSC?
Well, the thinking, as Pilar explained it, was that internal optimization has its limits. You can only squeeze so much cost out yourself. Outsourcing telecom was seen as the next logical step to get really significant savings.
And were the savings significant?
The projections were huge, something like 20–30% overall. And just the European telecom deal alone was expected to save 150 million euros over 5 years.
Wow, okay. That's a compelling number.
Definitely. But what's just as interesting is what they chose not to outsource.
Right, you mentioned that.
Pilar said they were still confident they could keep optimizing their hosting infrastructure internally. They did use T-Systems as a partner in Germany and parts of Europe for some hosting, but they kept a lot of control. And they were actually scaling up their internal application support and management, making it more specific to each division's needs.
So a very selective approach. Outsource for pure cost play on commodity stuff like telecoms, but keep the core, maybe more strategic stuff closer to home.
That seems to be the strategy, yeah. A deliberate balance. Outsource where it delivered big savings, but keep control over areas critical to their specific business processes.
So pulling this together, what does it tell us about how a giant company like DHL really uses technology and, well, it's people? It feels like more than just keeping the lights on.
Absolutely. It sounds like they were playing a very strategic, long game.
Which leads to, the constant challenge. How do you keep IT aligned with what the business needs, especially when those needs are always changing? And how do unexpected things like economic shifts affect that IT strategy?
It is, as the interview really emphasized, a continuous thing. It's never done because the business itself is never done evolving. Their approach or guiding principles seem to be, first, really listen to customers, understand what they expect.
Okay, customer-centric.
Right. And second, leverage their own global experience, all that knowledge from setting up warehouses and supply chains everywhere. They use that to design and constantly refine what they call best-in-class business processes. It's about learning and iterating constantly.
Makes sense. Build on what you know works globally.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really counterintuitive, especially regarding the economic shifts. Pilar mentioned the surprising positive impact of the economic slowdown back then on their IT budgets.
Wait, a positive impact? From a slowdown, how does that work?
I know, right? So obviously they did focus hard on cutting costs, making sure everything was just right, as he put it, for the tougher economic climate.
Standard procedure in a downturn. Belt tightening.
Yes, but the really clever part wasn't just the cutting. They managed to take those savings, that freed up budget and capacity, and redirect it straight into innovation and development of the new product.
Ah, so they didn't just cut the budget overall, they reallocated it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Savings from infrastructure, savings from that big telecom outsourcing deal. They channeled that money into what they saw as higher value activities,
Right.
like application development, building new things.
That's actually brilliant, turning a cost-cutting necessity into fuel for innovation.
It really is. Instead of just hunkering down, they used the pressure of the slowdown to free up resources and actively invest them in future growth.
That takes foresight and probably some confidence that your core operations are efficient enough to allow it.
Definitely. It shows a level of strategic maturity, not just reacting to the downturn, but using it as a catalyst.
Yeah, transforming savings into building new muscle, like you said earlier. That's a powerful idea.
It really stood out from the interview.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive? We've seen Alex Pilar's really adaptable leadership moving between business and IT. That's one thing. Then there's DHL's very structured, very strategic approach to this huge IT transformation. The internal IT company, the selective outsourcing.
Right, that nuanced decision-making about outsourcing versus keeping things in-house.
And maybe the most surprising bit, that counterintuitive idea that an economic slowdown could actually help drive innovation if you manage it right.
Yeah, exactly. Redirecting those savings into high-value development instead of just, banking them or letting them disappear. And maybe a final thought for you listening to this. How can understanding a journey like DHL's, this complex IT story, maybe inform your own strategic thinking, especially around that balance between optimizing internally and using external partners? And maybe more broadly, how can organizations look at constraints like a tough economy, not just as problems, but as real opportunities to innovate and build for the future?
That's a great question to ponder. How do you turn those pressures into something positive? Definitely something to reflect on, whether it applies directly to your work or just your interest in how big companies operate and adapt. Always fascinating stuff.